Brit Eady has officially taken the next step, and this time, it's not speculation or social media hints. According to publicly available court records, the Real Housewives of Atlanta alum has filed for divorce after 5 years of marriage, quietly turning a very public relationship into a legal matter behind closed doors. But what's catching attention isn't just the filing itself, it's how deliberate, controlled, and carefully structured this split appears to be. Because while most celebrity divorces unfold through leaks, accusations, and long back and forth, this one reads very differently. Court documents show Brit Eady filed to divorce her husband, Michael Cunningham, on Wednesday, listing December 1st as their official date of separation. That date lands just weeks before she briefly acknowledged the split on social media in a post that has since been deleted. The timing alone raises questions about what was happening privately versus what the public ever got to see. And then there's the language. In the filing, Brit states that the marriage is irretrievably broken, a standard legal phrase, but she goes a step further, requesting that Michael not receive spousal support or alimony. No drawn-out financial demands, no public blame, just a clear legal position laid out on paper. Even more interesting is how little there appears to be to divide. According to the documents, the only marital property listed is their home in Fulton County. Brit notes that both parties mutually agreed to put the house up for sale and split the proceeds evenly if it sells. No disputes disclosed, no hidden assets hinted at, just a clean, agreed-upon plan, at least on record. The same approach applies to their vehicles. Brit states that each of them should keep the cars they individually acquired during the marriage. Translation: no fight, no overlap, no negotiation needed. For a couple tied to reality television, where personal conflict often becomes public content, the quiet efficiency of this filing stands out. And that's where things take another turn. Despite previously addressing the separation on social media, Brit is now requesting that the divorce case be sealed. Her reason is straightforward. Both she and Michael are public figures connected to reality TV, and she wants to keep the legal process private. That request alone suggests a shift in strategy from public acknowledgement to controlled silence. Brit Eady was featured on one season of The Real Housewives of Atlanta and notably skipped the reunion, a move that already sparked conversation among fans at the time. Now, with this divorce filing, some are revisiting that moment, wondering whether personal circumstances behind the scenes played a role long before anything became public. Brit and Michael married in 2020, and according to the filing, they do not share any children, meaning there are no child custody or support matters involved. That absence removes one of the most complex and emotionally charged elements common in divorce proceedings, further streamlining the case. On paper, this looks like a clean break, but reality TV fans know that paperwork rarely tells the full story. The fact that Brit first acknowledged the separation online, then removed the post, followed by a formal filing weeks later, paints a picture of someone carefully recalibrating how much of her personal life remains public. In an era where visibility is currency, choosing privacy can be just as intentional as choosing exposure. And it raises a bigger question. Was this marriage already functionally over long before the public ever noticed? According to the timeline, the legal separation date predates the social media announcement. That suggests the decision may have been made quietly, processed privately, and only later acknowledged publicly. Briefly, what's also notable is what's missing from the filing. There are no allegations listed, no disputes outlined, no request for temporary relief beyond the basics. Everything reads procedural, measured, and contained. For someone connected to a franchise built on personal drama, that restraint is striking. It may also explain why Brit wants the case sealed. Once legal documents become public, they often invite speculation, misinterpretation, and viral narratives that take on a life of their own, especially when reality TV is involved. Sealing the case limits that exposure, keeping details confined to the court rather than the comment section. At this point, based on publicly available information, the process appears straightforward. But divorces, especially involving public figures, rarely stay simple forever. The sale of the home, the finalization of terms, and the court's response to the request for sealing will all determine how much, if anything, becomes public moving forward. And for fans of RHOA, there's another layer. What this means for Brit Eady's future relationship with the franchise, with reality TV, and with public storytelling altogether. Because sometimes the quietest exits say the most. As this case moves through the system, one thing is clear. Brit Eady isn't dragging this into the spotlight. She's doing the opposite. And that choice alone may signal a very different next chapter. But whether this remains a closed-door conclusion or the beginning of a larger conversation depends on what happens next. And what happens next may be less about courtrooms and more about positioning. Because in the world of reality television, silence is rarely accidental. Brit Eady's request to seal the case doesn't just protect legal details, it reshapes the narrative before it can fully form. By limiting access to filings, timelines, and personal disclosures, she effectively removes the raw material that tabloids and social media usually rely on to build speculation. That kind of move suggests foresight, not reaction, and it fits a broader pattern. Brit only appeared on one season of The Real Housewives of Atlanta, and her decision to skip the reunion already placed her slightly outside the traditional arc most housewives follow. Reunions are where storylines are clarified, conflicts are addressed, and public perception is often reshaped. Choosing not to attend meant leaving questions unanswered, and now, years later, this divorce filing follows a similar logic. Minimal explanation, maximum control. From a public perspective, everything we know comes from documents and brief, now deleted online statements. There's no ongoing commentary, no interviews, no attempts to steer sympathy or frame blame. Just facts, dates, and formal requests. That approach matters, because divorces involving public figures often become less about the legal separation and more about the surrounding narrative. Who knew what, when things really ended, and whether the public persona ever matched private reality? In this case, Brit appears to be drawing a firm boundary between those two worlds. Legally, the next steps are predictable. The court will review the filing, address the request to seal the case, and oversee the division of the marital property as outlined. If both parties continue to agree on terms, the process could move relatively quickly and quietly. But culturally, the ripple effects are harder to predict. Reality TV thrives on access, on confessionals, on emotional transparency. Choosing privacy, especially after stepping into that ecosystem, can signal a pivot away from it altogether. Or, just as plausibly, it can signal a reset before a more controlled return. And that's where viewers start asking new questions. Does this divorce close the door on Brit Eady's time in the Real Housewives universe? Or does it clear the slate for a future chapter, one defined on her own terms, not shaped by marital status or off-camera tension? At the moment, there's no public indication either way. What we do know is that Brit and Michael Cunningham entered this marriage in 2020 during a time when many couples faced unique pressures. And now, 5 years later, they're exiting it without children involved, without public disputes outlined, and without prolonged legal conflict, at least based on what's been made available. That alone makes this case stand out. In an environment where personal struggles are often amplified for attention, choosing restraint can be the most telling decision of all. As the legal process continues, any updates will likely come not through dramatic announcements, but through procedural milestones, court responses, finalized agreements, and quiet confirmations that the marriage has officially ended. Until then, the story remains less about what's being said and more about what isn't. And sometimes that silence speaks louder than anything else. If more details emerge about the sealed case request, the property sale, or Brit Eady's next public move, they won't just add information. They'll redefine how this chapter is understood. Because in the end, this isn't just a divorce filing. It's a carefully managed transition from public figure in a shared story to an individual closing one chapter and preparing for whatever comes next. And that next chapter is still unwritten.